Hello, everyone. It's good to be live with you again. Well, last night, an erroneous fact check article was written about me in partnership with Facebook. And the article does smear me and misinform the public about election coverage. The article targeted my election coverage and implied I was trying to mislead the public. And in doing so, the author of this article misleads the public about what's really going on with Wisconsin voter rolls. We're going to tackle this. A lot of information came out in Wisconsin last month that was sparsely covered. And we are going to actually play sound bites from that election investigator today to prove to you guys that the fact checkers are indeed misleading you with their articles. It's interesting. I'm actually going to show you something. When the fact check article about me first came out last night, the green screen's acting kind of weird. The article looked like this. They slapped a sticker over it saying election lies. And then if you look at it this morning, it says wrong number. So they got more subtle today. They're like, oh, crap, we don't want Ivory to sue us because she actually didn't lie. They know I didn't lie. And they don't want to be sued by me. These are fascinating fact checkers. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to show you guys the truth of what's going on with our sacred election system. Before I do, I want to shout out the sponsor of the coverage today, which is Reds with Ivory. This is a supplement drink of fruits and veggies in powder form. So sluggish blood is a real and overlooked problem. It's often associated with lackluster energy levels, brain fog, lack of stamina, and poor recovery from activity. If you have any of these symptoms, sluggish blood may be something that you should be very concerned about. Fortunately, there are solutions. I personally use Reds with Ivory. This ultra-rich powder delivers revitalizing support for healthy energy levels, circulation, and anti-aging. This amazing powder uses powerhouse ingredients to help reverse sluggish blood so that you look and feel your best. I couldn't be more thrilled with the results I've received. I've partnered with the creators of this amazing powder to give my audience up to 51% off their own bag to celebrate the new year. Go to redswithivory.com. Click that link down below to get your 51% discount. It tastes great too. Reds with Ivory tastes delicious, and you get all your fruits and veggie nutrients. Okay, so this fact check article, it's very fascinating to me. So early yesterday, I got an email from a woman from Pointer. She had a Pointer email address. Pointer was historically known for its journalism ethics. Now they've gotten into the fact check game, and I've read some Pointer articles that are shocking to me. They're unjournalistic. Anyway, this Pointer woman emails me. She said she's fact checking on behalf of Facebook for PolitiFact, and she's going to write an article about me. And she was wanting my side of it. And I was like, oh, good. Okay. At least I get to chime in on your fact check of me. So I, and she's like, first of all, did you see that Wisconsin put this information out and it's clearly saying that there is not FRAUD, the word I can't say on YouTube. FRAUD is not the issue. And I was like, hey, lady, first of all, I never called it the F word. I said these are problems and anomalies. It's a very strange situation going on in Wisconsin. And it appears to be extreme laziness, to be in the nicest terms, in regards to how Wisconsin maintains its voter rolls. Anyway, so I proceeded to give her more clarity on what she's looking into. She asked a couple of times which party I'm registered to vote for. And I explained to her, in Texas, you don't have to say which party you're registering to vote for. But what does that have to do with anything? She wanted to imply that I had bias in my coverage. Anyway, but I was nice. I sent her a lot of details, and she ended up not writing the article. Maybe she had a conscience. Someone else ended up writing the article. Someone named Alexis Tereszuk. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Tereszuk. Um, she writes this article late last night about me, and it misleads the public. Fact check: Wisconsin did not have an active voter turnout of 93.7% in 2020. It was 72.6%. I actually have the article up here. Let me share the screen with you so you can see it better than on my iPad. So here's the article that was written. Wisconsin did not have an active voter turnout. So this is in regards to my January 6th coverage. I did a whole YouTube just talking about, some of the reasons that these people went to the Capitol January 6th of last year. And it was all over all these crazy election anomalies we were seeing. And I updated the public that, in fact, just in December of 2021, there's big updates out of Wisconsin. And then I went over some of those updates. Now, there was a hearing in the Wisconsin legislature on December 8th that I did not attend. Okay, I live in Texas. So I didn't cover that hearing, but other reporters did. There was one reporter who was tweeting line by line what was being discussed. And in that YouTube, I referenced what that reporter was saying. So I read the tweets of that reporter and said, this is some of the things that were uncovered, that the election investigator, an IT guy, went over that were of concern in regards to how Wisconsin maintains its voter rolls. And my reading of those factoids, those were some pretty compelling numbers that were put out about Wisconsin. And one of them was the fact that 93.7% of the Wisconsinites who were active voters went and voted. That's an insanely high voter turnout. And it raises some eyebrows. And this is one of the things that the election investigator said in his testimony before the legislature. I cited what he said, and I put it in my Facebook teaser of the YouTube because I just thought that was so compelling. And that teaser ended up getting shared a lot, ended up getting forwarded to the fact checkers, and they said, we don't like that number. We're going to say it's not true, and this is what they did. So here's my Facebook post now. Didn't look like this yesterday, but now there's a big old false information checked by independent fact checkers label over top of it. And it got a lot of reaction. I think that's why it got forwarded to the fact checkers. So they're saying that I'm spreading false information when I am letting the public know that the independent investigator, the IT guy who was brought on to review voter rolls, did indeed say that active voter turnout in 2020 in Wisconsin was 93.7%. This fact checker falsely states that it was 72.6% of active voters who turned out. That's not true. That is not true. About 72% of people who were voting age turned out to vote. So you're old enough to vote, and then 72% of them allegedly turned out to vote. So this is the fact checker is really misleading the public. Now, don't take my word for it. I lined up the sound bites here of some of what the investigator was discussing. So let's play that clip in question. It's he starts out with something perhaps even more compelling, the fact that the voter rolls, when he analyzed the entire Wisconsin voter roll, there's 7 million separate voter records in Wisconsin, which has a population of just 5.8 million. So there's 5.8 million people in Wisconsin, but there's 7+ million separate voter records. So he said it appears voters are never removed from the database. They're just moved over to an inactive status. So there's where the inactive versus active comes into play. It's important to understand that we can't look at all voter registration records, because there's currently more on there than there even are Wisconsinites. But anyway, take a listen to what he says here. And at the end is where he gets into what the fact checkers are saying I basically lied about. Here it is.
The file contains slightly over 7 million separate voter records. According to World Population Review, the population of Wisconsin is currently approximately a little more than 5.8 million. Based on those numbers, it seems probable that the voters are not ever actually removed from this database, but rather there's a status field that is used to set them to inactive. That's an assumption based upon those numbers. The Wisconsin Election Commission's site lists the number of age Wisconsin citizens at the time of the 2020 election as a little over 4.5 million. Of those, in the voter file, a little over 3.5 million are listed as active voters. And just for information, that means that approximately 60% of Wisconsin citizens are registered as active voters. In the 2020 election, according to the voter file, slightly over 1.9 million Wisconsin citizens voted absentee. Slightly over 1.3 million voted at the polls. A total of a little over 3.3 million voted. Actually, I'll give that number. That's 3,308,634. If you take that and you divide that into the number of age voters in Wisconsin, that calculates to a turnout of 72.9%, which is also a number which has been published. I find it interesting that if you just do the percent of active voters who cast a vote, that's actually 93.7% of all active voters did cast a vote in the 2020 general election.
So there he says it right there at the end. According to this independent investigator, his name is Jeff O'Donnell, software and database engineer. He has analyzed voter rolls in other jurisdictions in the past, which is why he was brought on in Wisconsin. He has a history of looking at this stuff and making sure it's being done right. And he says that the active voter turnout it was 93.7%. In Wisconsin. He said it right there. I mean, you heard him. And then we see the fact check article say Wisconsin did not have an active voter turnout of that much. It was 72%. But he clearly said there that the 72% comes from all people of voting age. If you look at every Wisconsinite who's of voting age, we know very well that in every state, there's a significant percentage of people who never vote. There's a lot of people who are voting age, but the number of people who are actually active voters is always a lot lower. So Wisconsin is saying that of all this false fact check is saying that of all active voters, 72% turned out. Now, to me, I wish they were. What is this word active voter? You should either say registered or unregistered, and cut to the chase. The way this investigator is talking, he's implying that active voter means registered voter. So if it means registered voter, then he's saying that of all the registered voters, 93% of them turned out to vote. And Wisconsin is saying, this false fact check is saying, no, only 72% of the active or registered voters turned out. Now, I wanted to compare that with Texas and get some context, because I'm in Texas. So Texas has a population of 30 million. 22.5 million of those Texans are of voting age. 17 million of those Texans are actually registered to vote. So about 75% of those eligible are registered. And then out of the registered voters, only 66% of those who were registered actually cast their ballots in 2020, according to Texas Tribune. which was actually 6% higher than in 2016. So a lot of people in Texas turned out to vote, but only 66% of those registered actually cast their ballots. They had everything in line to go cast the ballot, but only 66% showed up. That was Texas. Now, in Wisconsin, if active voter means registered voter, this guy is saying that 93.7% of those who had everything in line to go vote went and voted, a dramatically higher percentage in Wisconsin than in Texas. The fact checkers are looking at total number of Wisconsinites who are eligible. They're of age. They're taking the of age number, not the percentage of people who are registered. And that's how they're trying to make it look like a more normal percentage, it seems, by saying, okay, of all the people who could have gone and voted, 72% did go and vote. But if you compare that to Texas, again, Texas has 22.5 million people who are of age who can go vote. And of that, if you do the math, only 11.2 million people voted in Texas, if Texas Tribune's numbers are right. 11.2 million people voted in Texas in 2020, which is only 50% of those who were eligible actually went and cast their ballots. Now, that same number, 11.2 million, is actually 66% of those registered. But if you're comparing it to all those who are eligible, doing the same comparison in Wisconsin, it's only 50% of Texans. Okay. So what is 72% in Wisconsin is a 50% turnout in Texas if you want to break it down that way. So if you're breaking it down that way, Wisconsin still had a dramatically bigger turnout than Texas. So the question is that normal, or was something goofy up in that state? Now, one thing that is different between Texas and Wisconsin is that in Wisconsin, you can register to vote on election day. So in Texas, you have to register to vote 30 days. It has to be postmarked 30 days before election day in order to be registered. So that would make it easier to go and vote if you forgot to register, which could be why 72% of those eligible to vote did vote in Wisconsin compared to just 50% in Texas. But either way, I stand correct. I am correct in what I said back on the 6th when I did this recap. And I said that the hearing in Wisconsin on December 8th, this investigator did indeed say that out of active voters in Wisconsin, 93.7% of them turned out to vote. So I do not appreciate these fact checkers circling the wagons with Facebook, slapping a big old fact check blur label over top of my video that actually tells the truth, and therefore misleading the public to think that I'm misleading the public. Why are they doing this? Why is there such an insane effort surrounding the election, the 2020 election, to make it look perfect? This narrative is insane. I don't appreciate the erroneous fact check. And I'm fascinated by the fact that, last night they were trying to say that I spread election lies. Then today they switch it to wrong numbers. That lies label to the wrong numbers label. They had to tone it down a bit because they realized I can sue them for lying about me by saying that I'm lying to you guys. So just stay woke, okay? Be very aware that Facebook and its independent fact checkers are working hard with whoever else to put out an image that the 2020 election was perfect, when the fact is Wisconsin strangely has 7 million people on its voter records, according to this independent investigator, when the population is only 5.8 million. 7 million people on the voter records. only 5.8 million population. But then we look at active voters, which is a smaller number. And he said there's 3.5 million active voters are listed in the Wisconsin rolls. And of that 3.5 million, almost every single one of them turned out to vote. 93.7%. Take from that what you will. I never said it was the F word. I just said that's eyebrow raising amid a list of other strange anomalies. So let's listen to some of the other strange anomalies that he listed in that hearing December 8th that most of the media didn't want to cover. Here we go.
10% of the total voter roll in the file are listed as registering in the 6 months prior to and including November 3rd, 2020. That's also 22% of all active voters in the rolls registered in that 6-month period up to November 3rd, 2020. It is interesting that 31,872 voters whose application happened in that 6-month window before November 3rd are now in the current file listed as inactive. That number seems to be excessive, and I think it needs to be explained and investigated. Wisconsin Public Radio reported on August 4th, 2021, that the WEC had removed 174,000 and change voters from the rolls because they'd not voted in 4 years, and another 31,800 who were on a 2019 voter list that was the subject of the lawsuit. None of those 31,872 would be in either of those classes since their application date was in the 6 months prior to the November 2020 election.
All right, he threw out a lot of numbers there, but very interesting that in 2021, over 100,000 people were swept off of the voter rolls when the margin of victory for Biden in Wisconsin was just 20,000. But what he's saying there, what was really surprising as well, is that he said 22% of Wisconsin's active voters just signed up in the 6 months prior to November 3rd, 2020. So that number of active voters they have, a whopping 22% of them came on just in the 6 months up to and on November 3rd. They registered. That is a lot of Wisconsinites, new registrations. But then 31,000 of them, if you look back, have already come up. They've gone inactive. So they hopped on to vote, and now they're back to being inactive, which 31,000, that's more than the margin of victory for Biden. So the question is, what happened to those people? There's many, honestly, Wisconsin it's a big state. There's many reasons in the months following why those people could have gone inactive. But he said he's shining light on that, saying that's a little strange. We should look into why that is. And then he also said this.
Lists out in 10-year intervals how long voters have been registered to vote in Wisconsin according to the system. And these are only active voters. For instance, there are 47,067 that are currently active that have been registered for less than 10 years. There's 2.1 million that have been registered for less than 20. The thing that caught the eye is that there are 9 that have been registered for more than 120 years, and 121,251 that have been registered between 110 and 119 years. The reason for that number, when we dug in more, is that there are 119,000 and change voters who have an application date of January 1st, 1918. We have heard that number is perhaps a placeholder for information that was not available. That is, though, a very large number, 119,283. That's just people who are active today. In total, of people who are both active and inactive in that file, the number is more than 500,000 that have that particular date. That is definitely an anomaly. It doesn't look right, and as such, it needs to be explained, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that was another bullet point that I hit on in the video that ended up getting fact checked by Facebook and its partners. And that was the initial bullet point that the Pointer / PolitiFact journalist emailed me about yesterday. And she said, well, that doesn't mean it's the F word. That doesn't mean it's FRAUD. And did you see Wisconsin's rebuttal on this? And Wisconsin's rebuttal, the Wisconsin Elections Commission, they wrote this long thing about it on their website, trying to explain why it is that 120,000 people who are listed as active voters also have a voter registration date prior to 1920. A bunch of them registered to vote. It said they're listed as having registered to vote in 1918. In Wisconsin Elections Commission's like, no, you guys are just misunderstanding. They're like, this is all due to a data migration thing we did back in 2006. We had all the local jurisdictions pull their voter registration information together under one roof for us. And when we did that, some of the active voters didn't have their registration dates collected. There was no registration date information. So we just, picked 1918. And that's why, and I guess he was talking about numbers going back to 1900. When you watch the full hearing, one of the legislators is looking through the numbers he had provided, and she's talking about dates also listed as 1917. So, we just in Wisconsin Elections Commission is saying, yeah, for people who didn't have that information, we put the registration date as way back when, and that's due to data migration in 2006. And so, this PolitiFact Pointer fact checker in partnership with Facebook is emailing me this, and I was like, oh, thanks for the hyperlink of Wisconsin Elections Commission trying to explain why they think it's fine that they have bizarre anomalies. Like, okay, them explaining themselves does not make it any less of an anomaly. You're going to blame, it's just bizarre to me that, okay, and that was a 15-year ago data migration. You're saying you guys migrated data and got things all in order 15 years ago, and you still haven't sorted out why you have this many people listed as being 100 plus, active voters who are way over the year 100 years old, and like, no, but obviously they're not that old. It's just we had to pick a date. Well, why the heck would you have that date of all dates? If you have to pick, if the data migration happened in 2006, maybe the registration date just inadvertently becomes 2006. But no, for some reason it's 1918 or whatever. I was like, lady, this is still an anomaly. It's still a problem. It's still something really wacky and strange in Wisconsin. And I'm not taking back anything that I posted on Facebook. And so she ended up not writing the article, like I said, but some other lady took over and did write the article. I think the Pointer lady actually had a conscience, and the woman who did write the article actually doesn't name me. She calls me the narrator. So, which I think maybe she has a bit of a conscience too, where she doesn't want to ruin my rep on Google results or something. So this article doesn't come up when you Google me, of them basically smearing me. Basically, they had to do their job as, puppets of Facebook to shut down any actual clear information about what's happening with what's being covered in elections. But, so they did their job in writing the hit piece, but somehow, could tell I was innocent, so protected me by not naming me. I don't know. This whole getting fact checked by Facebook thing is really bizarre to me. I've never had Facebook personally come after me like that. This is a Facebook article just about me and my election coverage. Very fascinating stuff. There's one more one more soundbite from this guy, really important, that I want to show you here.
Given the known vulnerabilities with Wisconsin Registration Database API, it would be possible to switch these voters to active at any time as needed by a nefarious actor to vote those individuals without their knowledge. An investigation into whether that event occurred could be undertaken by examining the computer log files for the Wisconsin Registration Database. Those would be extremely helpful.
So he's saying there are known vulnerabilities in the system that could allow someone to switch an inactive voter to an active voter. If we circle back to that first soundbite I showed with him, where he spells out that there's apparently 7 million listed voters in Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin's population is 5.8 million. So he explains, well, I think that's just because when someone is no longer an active registered voter, they're just flipped over to inactive, but not deleted from the system. But he's saying with the vulnerabilities that exist, you could flip them to active, which could possibly open the door for, their vote to be cast when it shouldn't be. So he brought up some really alarming things, and it is fascinating that Facebook is circling the wagons on this, and that it was actually extremely hard for me to find a copy of this hearing. There's actually a nonprofit, I think it's called wisi.com or wisi.org, is a nonprofit media outlet there in Wisconsin who actually recorded the whole thing, but you have to pay $10 just to view it. So I paid $10 today so I could bring you guys these sound bites. But it is ridiculous trying to find what's really going on and get to the truth and get through false fact checks. It's a crying shame what's happening to media in the 21st century. But so these were the things the guy brought up in front of the Wisconsin state legislature. And one of the legislators made an interesting point. She was like, was the Wisconsin Elections Commission invited to this hearing? And someone else was like, no, they weren't. But this opens up a door for them to, explain themselves. And I'm thinking the same as that first lady. Like, well, they should have been invited. So this could have been a robust discussion. When this guy's bringing up the anomalies, Wisconsin Elections Commission could be explaining themselves and they could be sorting things out. But they weren't even invited to this hearing. So he's giving his findings and they're like, that's interesting. And then I guess Wisconsin Elections Commission did its own little rebuttal write-up on its website. So interesting times. But the way this hearing started was really, really, really interesting as well. There was a public information request made, a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request, that obtained Wisconsin Election Commission emails with a very wealthy group out of New York. And this group poured a lot of money into Wisconsin to partner with the Elections Commissioner, work with election officials in Wisconsin to create this app that allowed this group out of New York to get real-time tracking of who's receiving mail-in ballots and who has mailed in their ballot, which opens the door for massive vote. I don't know if you can say this word, harvesting on YouTube. And so they also, the data that they were collecting in partnership, this New York group, like, why is this nosy, wealthy New York group prying into Wisconsin elections going back to early 2020, months and months before the election actually happened? They were showing all these emails in this hearing. It was really compelling. But the data they were also collecting, these New Yorkers wanted to know the racial breakdown of everyone. They wanted to know everyone's race and who had received a ballot in the mail and who had sent the ballot in yet, and where those addresses were located. Well, that opens the door for whoever wants to know which person of which color received a ballot yet, and you can go knock on their door and say, hey, can I harvest that from you? they were just, the legislators were like, yeah, this is something that's really concerning. Why did this happen? And they were only just recently in late 2021 able to uncover that happened. And I'm not seeing coverage of that anywhere in the media. And I'm wondering, why is all of this stuff being so suppressed in the media? Elections have always been a sacred thing to cover. And this is very strange stuff. And fingers crossed that this video that I'm making right now will stay up on YouTube. I've proven that the fact checkers deceived the public today, proven by simply playing the man's sound bites that I was citing in my initial video that got fact checked, which that full video is on YouTube, posted January 6th, if you want to look at that. So I think fact checkers don't like to be proven wrong. So hopefully they don't come after this video next. Yeah, I wasn't making up that 93.7% active voter turnout. That's coming straight from the IT guy who looked at the data. So take from that what you will, and realize that these fact checkers are turning out to be pretty deceptive people. Other than that, shout out to the U.S. Supreme Court shutting down Biden's attempt at dictatorship when it comes to what goes in your arm. If he attempted a big overreach that just got shut down by the Supreme Court today. So corporations with 100 or more employees now no longer have to force those employees to get it in the arm. It's up to each individual employee whether they want to make that happen. And the Supreme Court, in its write-up about its decision as to why they're doing that, they said here, although Congress has indisputably given OSHA the power to regulate occupational dangers, it has not given the agency the power to regulate public health more broadly. Requiring the needle for 84 million Americans selected simply because they work for employers with more than 100 employees certainly falls in the latter category. Yeah, so basically, Supreme Court saying, Biden, it does not make sense for you to target a big corporation under the guise that you're protecting workplace safety when really you're using them to more broadly regulate public health. You can't mess around like that, buddy. So there is a conservative majority in the Supreme Court right now, which is probably why that happened. But listening to like the female justices when they were hearing oral arguments last Friday, it was really clear those female justices loved the needle. They wanted the needle in every arm, and they're probably very bummed that they didn't get to make that happen today. So freedom of choice reigns for now, at least in that area. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in, and wish me luck in my coverage, in my abilities to keep reporting here. My uncensored website, where I go get into the topics that YouTube forbids, is linked in my description. ivoryhacker.com is my uncensored coverage. It's a TV type website set up similar to YouTube, just big video reports. And it's actually now a TV app. So you can, like, if you have Roku, you can just type in Ivory Hacker and my TV app will come up. You can watch my video reports, which are often like documentary style. It's all the stuff that YouTube doesn't want you to know about, and all the other elites don't want you to know about. So that's what we tackle on my uncensored website. So if I can't talk about it here on YouTube, I can talk about it there. No code words needed there. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great Thursday, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on Truth Bombs with Ivory and Jenny. Jenny's back with me doing Truth Bombs tomorrow. Internet connection should be way better. I finally got some robust internet. I was wondering why my videos were grainy. Apparently it's because I had lower speed internet. I didn't even know. I'm not an expert on that stuff. So we should have a good show here on YouTube tomorrow evening, probably 4 p.m. Central. We'll see you then. Bye.